Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's webinar where we get to celebrate Psych Central's 20th anniversary with its founder, Dr. John Grohol. My name is Zoë Kessler. As Psych Central's webinar host, I thought it would be fun and appropriate to kick off the new year with Dr. Grohol and learn a bit more about Psych Central and all the wonderful things it's done over the years. But before we begin, I'd like to remind you that you will be able to access the complete webinar online at Psych Central's YouTube channel later this week. And of course, you'll be hearing a lot more about our offerings in a moment, but just as a reminder, Psych Central has videos and webinars on a wide variety of mental health topics with guest speakers from many disciplines. During tonight's webinar, please feel free to ask questions by typing them into the question area on your control panel. We will try to answer everyone's questions, but we'll also do our best to wrap up the session within an hour. Now, to introduce tonight's very special guest, Dr. John Grohol. Dr. Grohol is an online mental health expert. He's a researcher, an author, and the founder of the award-winning mental health network, PsychCentral.com. Since 1995, he's been a tireless advocate on behalf of people with mental health concerns in trying to help reduce the stigma and discrimination that often accompany them. His most recent book is Self-Help That Works: Resources to Improve Emotional Health and Strengthen Relationships. He's also a founding board member of the Society for Participatory Medicine. Tonight, Dr. Grohol will share the history of Psych Central, where we're at today, and what the future holds. So without further ado, let's say hello to Dr. John Grohol. Hello.
Hi, Zoe. Great to be here this evening.
Welcome. I am so glad you agreed to do this.
You bet. I'm looking forward to the evening.
And you know, as a blogger, I'm quite familiar with our site, and I've been thrilled to be blogging for you for several years now. But I'm also really interested in sort of the background in all things Psych Central. So I guess we should just start at the beginning, and maybe you can tell us what the inspiration was behind Psych Central.
Sure, absolutely. This is a little bit of a story, so I just ask everybody to sit tight, get your favorite beverage, and give me a few minutes to help you understand that the origins of Psych Central. I have to take you back a bit in time to my own childhood and my own personal story. Like many Americans who grew up in nondescript suburbia, my friends and I created our own excitement as much as we could. We played for endless hours in our backyards together. Ted, Rob, and I were the three musketeers during that time. But I was closer with Rob, who was really my childhood best friend. We would literally spend thousands of hours together, never noticing the passing of time, watching TV, playing indoors and out, playing video games, just hanging out together, things like that. We were very inseparable pals. But as we got older, circumstances slowly pushed us apart. When we became teens, Rob ended up going to a private school while Ted and I attended the same public high school. Personal computers became an active hobby of mine, but less so with my friends. And we kind of saw less and less of each other as we were in school. But when we did spend time together, it was still good. We still enjoy each other's company because, you have the same in-jokes, having grown up together and basically the same perspective of the world around you. After graduation, though, we took three separate paths. I went on to attend the local university while Rob and Ted went to work. Rob eventually went back to school and became a radiology technician at the local hospital. I spent more and more of my free time immersed in programming and online bulletin board systems, BBSs, one of the precursors to online communities in the web. I even ran my own BBS while in college. In college, I rented a house with my brother, and Rob, although not a roommate, was a constant fixture at the house. My brother and Rob were both into cars far more than I was, So they spent countless hours tinkering on engines of whatever car was currently parked in our driveway. And while I spent time with Rob, we had grown apart somewhat as the years passed. When I graduated from university in the spring of 1990, I headed down to South Florida for graduate school. And that was a big move for me. I was far away from my home, my friends, and the life I knew. I never expected the call I got on November 8th, 1990. It was a call I can remember as though it happened yesterday. Rob was dead. Suicide. Friends and family pieced together the story as best they could, and his suicide note helped. He was distraught over a recent relationship that had ended badly, his first serious one. He had tried different ways to cheer up over the past few months before then, but when I last saw him in August, he seemed perfectly fine, which is kind of the thing that you hear from a lot of survivors of people who have committed suicide. My brother had thought odd Rob tried to give him his motorcycle helmet since he still rode regularly, but he never saw that as a warning sign of things to come. Rob's death shook me, like most suicides shake people who continue to live on. I lapsed into a depressive episode of my own, feeling quite rudderless and like my own life suddenly had a whole less meaning and purpose. My friends at school tried to console me, but I didn't really know what to do or what to say or even really what I needed. And I went to Rob's funeral, then went back to school, and I was kind of walking through my classes like a zombie. I didn't know then what I know now. Lots of people experience survivor's guilt after a suicide, asking questions that simply have no answers. Some even lapse into their own depression. So for me, I spent more of my time on BBSs and eventually found my way to the Internet's equivalent at the time, something called Usenet news groups. I also found something surprising, an online support group called Alt Support Depression. I spent a lot of time on that group, getting support from others for my feelings and giving back support in whatever way I could. I soon became curious about what other kinds of support groups might be available online for people suffering from things like depression or other mental health concerns. So I started looking around online for them, and when I found a new one, I added it to a simple text file. That text file became an index of every online support group I could find, no matter where it existed online, in news groups, on a mailing list, or on one of the commercial internet services at the time, like Prodigy or CompuServe. And when the web began to catch fire in 1994, I started looking for interesting mental health and psychology websites too. It just kind of made sense. You have to keep in mind, this was mostly pre-web stuff. This was before most regular people had easy access, direct access to the raw internet, what we kind of take for granted today. And because of that, and because this was before the internet, before the web, stuff was really hard to find. Like there was no Google, there was no Yahoo. So these indexes I was compiling and publishing were really one of the few guideposts available in the online world at that time. So when it appeared the web was here to stay, I started my own website called Psych Central, John Grohol's mental health page. And that was in early 1995. Its purpose at first was simple, to act as a place people could find the indexes I had compiled of all these great mental health and psychology resources online. So I was kind of like a Yahoo directory for mental health and psychology stuff. And then I expanded the website slowly to include essays of my own and started summarizing the diagnostic criteria for many common mental disorders. So when I finished grad school in 1995, I was offered a job to create a bigger, better version of my own personal website. And rather than go into private practice, I took that job. It was then that I realized that my love of psychology and all that graduate school work and all that stuff that I had been studying all that time could be combined with my hobby of programming and computers. And the thing that could combine it all together was the internet, was being online. And I also realized at that time that such an effort could reach far more people with self-help resources than I ever could one-on-one through private practice or the like. I could help people like my friend Rob who couldn't find a way to talk to someone about his problems and feelings. It could be done through simply helping people find the information and support online, anonymously if they'd like. A place to be safe and secure in exploring their concerns and feelings in the privacy of their own home. So that's really how Psych Central began, as a place to house those indexes, such as you see here, of great mental health resources and support groups online. And it blossomed as a place to find basic mental health information too, to ensure people knew, the very basics of various disorders, like the symptoms. Because back in 1995, there was no easy way to find what are the symptoms of depression, what are the symptoms of ADHD, what are the symptoms of anxiety and such. So that is a kind of a look at the very first page of what Psych Central looked like in 1995. And as we grew over the years, well, I'll end that. I'll end that here. That's a good place to stop for.
Wow, that's thank you so much for sharing that. That's such a moving story, and how motivating that must have been. Wow, I had no idea about these origins. Did you want to tell us a little more about what the early days were like, or?
Sure, absolutely. So, I really spent most of the early days of Psych Central working for other companies, helping them build their mental health websites. But I continued working on Psych Central sort of on the side as a hobby website, continuing to put time and effort into it when I could on the weekends or in the evenings, by keeping those resources updated. Remember, all those indexes. Every time I came across, a new website or a new support group or something, I was updating it, or one of the old support groups left, I had to, take it out of the list. And so I actually started adding articles, essays, book reviews, and we even did some quizzes too back then. Those first 10 years, from about 1995 to about 2005, we're really just focused on keeping everything up to date, finding and highlighting new resources, and adding new articles and such from time to time. It was really largely still a labor of love, because I was still focused on, I had a full-time job, and so I really could only do this on the side. It was a one-man show. There were I got some help and some volunteer help here and there, but most of the years it cost more to run Psych Central than it ever made. There was no advertising or anything on it back then.
Wow. Yeah.
And in 1999, I wanted to start blogging, but in 1999 there really wasn't any good blogging software. WordPress wasn't invented until 2004, so I wrote my own blogging software called Open Journal, and I kept that running and blogged on it for about 5 years. And then when WordPress came along in 2004, I saw that it was just this fantastic platform that was probably going to be around for some time, and we actually moved over to that in 2005, 2006, and we're still running that today. So.
It sounds like Psych Central's site grew in a very, very organic way. It sounds amazing. So you added support groups to the site in 2001. What was the reasoning behind that? What was that like?
Yeah, so the support groups came out of understanding that we I found all those great support groups online back on the internet way back in 1991, and the biggest problem with the Usenet news groups where they existed and mailing lists is that they're kind of difficult to access. If you didn't have special software, or you didn't understand the specific instructions on how to subscribe and unsubscribe from a mailing list, it was really kind of convoluted and not super easy for a normal, ordinary, maybe not super computer savvy person to go and sort of find out. So the idea of putting support groups on the web was something that I started doing back in 1997 with another website. And at about that same time, I was also started my once weekly mental health chats at a place called the WBS, which was in the mid to late 1990s the largest online chat community, and it was all done through the web. That weekly chat fostered its own community of members who met in the WBS rooms even while the once weekly chat was not in session. So they kind of started their own little support community on that other website. So when the WBS was subsumed by another company in an acquisition and eventually shut down, and when the mental health site I originally developed for another company shuttered their online support groups I had built, I decided enough was enough. I was sick of seeing users treated like they didn't matter and like they were just, a piece of a corporate, the corporate asset to be discarded when it was no longer easy to continue supporting them. So that's why in 2001 we decided to start offering our own online support community at Psych Central, and we launched those forums at Psych Central using an online bulletin board system that was popular at the time. So that's what the very first forums looked like. We only had 6 forums and a few dozen members at the beginning, building up to about 30 forums and 10,000 members in 2006. And this is what it looked like right after we launched it. It was actually on Grohol.com, which was another domain that I was running stuff on. Obviously, that's my last name. So, and we eventually moved all this over to Psych Central. So.
Cool. Yeah, okay. Thank you. And so, okay, so we're up to that point. What was the tipping point for Psych Central's growth?
So in 2005, I started to become frustrated by watching yet another startup I was involved with spend millions of dollars building stuff that nobody was asking for and nobody wanted. I mean, to see the amount of money spent and wasted on just design and just ridiculous things. I was frustrated. I was like, this can be done a lot better, and you don't need to spend millions of dollars to do it. So at that time, somebody famous had a vision for the future of online health, and I was to be a part of it. So within 2 years, I left that startup and decided to focus full time on making Psych Central more than just a side hobby. In mid-2006, I set out to make Psych Central the largest and most popular online mental health resource. I actually had to take the dive at the point where it wasn't clear to me at all whether Psych Central could actually be a company and actually support, not only paying me, but eventually paying other people too, because for the longest time, we didn't even run advertisements on the website. So there was a big deal to sort of make that leap. And then, of course, in so 2006 is when I actually went full-time with Psych Central and really made that leap of faith that the site, if I gave it enough time and I spent enough time working with it and building it and growing it and just making it the best mental health site I could possibly make it, with the help of a lot of other people, it would actually become that success I had envisioned. And, we hit that tipping point in 2008 when we were named one of the top 50 websites online at the time by Time.
Time Magazine.
Time Magazine. Of all the all the, millions upon hundreds of millions of websites out there. This wasn't just the top 50 health websites. This was the top 50 websites, period.
Wow.
And they gave us that recognition, and that was just amazing.
You
So,
must have felt like you won an Oscar.
yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
That was just amazing to me, which brings us to today, quite
Wow.
literally.
So build it and they will come. I mean,
Well,
okay, so
build
what
it
is-
and have faith in yourself that they will come. But focus on what you do best. And what I did best was making sure that people had all the information they needed to make a good decision about their mental health care, about a disorder, about treatment, and try and sort of be that objective, independent voice online today that sometimes has been sorely lacking. You sometimes wonder, who can you trust, and we wanted to be those people that people could trust. So.
Indeed. Great. All right, so the million-dollar question, how's the site doing today in traffic? Can you give us any numbers?
Yeah, sure. So today we are up to 7 million unique visitors per month. Some months we do better than that. Other months we 7 million is a minimum. Nearly 30%, or almost a third of our traffic is associated with the blogs that we run. We have over 70 active blogs today, and I'll talk a little bit more about them. But that's a big component of our traffic base. Another big component is the interactive quizzes that we run. If you want to understand how you might be at risk for something like depression or ADHD, you can go on the website and you can find out, you can take a screening quiz, and it can give you an idea of whether this is something that may be a concern to you, that you could go and talk to a healthcare professional or a mental health professional. They're not diagnostic, but they can help a person understand maybe it's an area of concern. 8% of our 7% of our traffic is driven by social media today, and more than 50% of our traffic is mobile. Cell phones, smartphones, it has just blown up in the past year and a half or so. That statistic a year and a half ago was probably more like 20 to 30%, and so now we are actually in an era where most publishers like ourselves, we're actually designing, or we have to envision a future where most people are accessing our resources not through a laptop or desktop computer. They're doing it through their handheld device. So.
Right.
And then just some statistics on our social media reach. We reach about 500,000 people every week through our Facebook pages and our Twitter followers. I think that's it for the stat.
Wow, 104,000 Twitter. What year did we? Do you know offhand what year we were on Twitter? Psych Central was on Twitter. Hello, John, are you still there?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Nope, no problem.
Right. I should explain to folks that, just to remind them, when I say we, I blog for Psych Central, and I feel quite an attachment to it, so I like to feel part of the team, but
sure,
yeah,
absolutely.
Twitter is such a cool medium. Okay, that's a lot of followers.
Yep, and there's our community stats as well.
Okay.
Just wanted to throw those up there as well. I mean, it's just amazing that we have so many members who are in our support groups today that are being so active and posting so often and so much over the past 14 years, 13 years on our two communities. So.
And is that I don't know if there's any way of knowing this, but is that like a consistent membership? Do these people sort of change, or do they tend to join the group and stick with it for years, or what is that?
Yeah,
Sort of
I
like?
don't actually have that data in front of me to tell you
Mhm.
exactly what the average member looks like.
Okay.
We do find that a lot of our members in the communities do come into the community to have a specific question answered and may stick around for a little while, but a lot of them will come in and have the question answered and then sort of move on. So.
Yes, yes, makes sense. Thank you. So NeuroTalk, I see this NeuroTalk thing here. What is NeuroTalk and where did that come from?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that Psych Central actually has a sister community called NeuroTalk that we started in 2006. And we did that because in the summer of 2006, one of the Internet's largest neurological support communities called Brain Talk went dark for over 2 months with no communication to its members.
Oh,
I know.
wow.
And with no communication to its members about what happened or if it would ever return.
Mm.
They had a hardware issue, went offline, and that was it. Like most of its members thought it was gone for good. It was a devastating loss to the tens of thousands of people who depended on that daily support for their neurological health concerns. And here's the thing: I knew the owner of Brain Talk. But I couldn't get a response from him about what happened to the community or if it was ever coming back. So in the meantime, given that I didn't think it was coming back, I decided to step in, and we created something called Brain Talk 2 to help fill in the gap in case the community didn't come back. And when it did come back, we asked the members, hey, do you want to keep this Brain Talk 2 thing going or not, or do you just want to go back home to your old Brain Talk? And the members of that new community overwhelmingly wanted us to continue it.
So did the other Brain Talk come back, you mean?
It eventually did, but they lost all of their forum postings and all of their data, and users had to create, brand new accounts, and it was kind of a nightmare and a mess, and it also kind of demonstrated what happens when well-meaning and very well-intentioned people run a resource that is so dependent upon that other people are so dependent upon, tens of thousands of other people, and they're kind of just doing it in the background as a hobby, which is a problem when you start getting into those big numbers, because if the guy who was running it, that wasn't his full-time job. It wasn't, it was a little server that he just, was kind of running for fun for the community.
Right. So NeuroTalk stepped in and took up the slack, and I take it, I'm dying to hear the end of your story. Did people stay with NeuroTalk? Or?
Yeah. So we're now actually, we actually have 30 times the number of posts and threads than the community we replaced. We're 30 times bigger than Brain Talk is. We stepped in, we renamed it to NeuroTalk, so we didn't want to step on their name. And then we pride ourselves in being able to run stable, reliable communities for the tens of thousands of people that depend on it. And because really, one of the things I talk about over and over again in all my writings and all the work I've done is that people have an amazing capability and power within themselves to help heal and to help their recovery process. And these online communities like NeuroTalk, like the forums at Psych Central, and like any online community today, they are wonderful, just amazing, powerful places where people can do a lot of good work and get the support for their emotional health needs and social support needs as well. So,
that brings to mind, do you know if is there actual research about online, there you go, self-help and support groups that function online? Is there any research done around that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to touch, briefly upon, this topic because it's so near and dear to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the power of self-help and support groups that the more we know ourselves, the more resilient we can be. If we know our strengths and weaknesses, when confronted with some adversity or some sort of obstacle in life, we will know it's just a temporary setback. It doesn't mean something bigger about ourselves or our personalities or something. Most of our health and mental health care is first and foremost self-care. We do most of the work we need to do on our mental health needs on our own, in our own homes, in our own lives.
Wow.
So much good work can be done on one's own. We all start off by learning about the issue or condition affecting us, because education is power. I know we hear that a lot, but it's true. And that's step one for a lot of people, learning about their condition. Step two is asking people we know and trust for their advice or opinions about the issue. And we turn to our social media networks. We turn to a trusted family member or friend. And then step three, we try different things out. Someone says X, Y, Z work for them. We give it a try. Most self-help methods don't cost much, if anything, and so they're easy to try. We might join a self-help group online, like one of the support groups we have. And then we get more advice and more strategies to try. It's only at step four where a person thinks, hey, maybe I need even more help for this. And you might seek out treatment from your doc or a mental health professional like a psychologist. Most people never get to step four. And I think that's really important to understand. And that's okay. That's a good thing. Some are helped enough by the other things that they don't ever need step four. Some, however, still do, but are ashamed to ask about treatment, or treatment is provided only by jumping through so many insurance hoops it seems like it's more trouble than it's worth. I guess the point being, self-help care is good quality care and what most people do and benefit from long before they ever see a professional. And you know what? That's okay. That's a good thing. The research we have into self-help methods and self-help tools backs this up. Like, there's no doubt in my mind, after having read hundreds of studies in this area, that these things do work for people who put them to use in their own lives. So I think a lot of times we tend to poo-poo or not really give these kinds of tools and resources the benefit that they deserve of our attention and of our time. They can be really powerful things.
Wow. That is, it's such a, that's so profound. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but I've never heard it articulated that way. John, I really appreciate that. We do most of our mental health work at home, and the way you described it and when you think about it, absolutely, of course, that does make sense. And it's just so incredibly important that these resources are available, and I think that must be part of why Psych Central has earned such a great reputation. I mean, because this resource is there. That's just, I need to listen to this webinar again just to hear you talk about that part. That was great.
Thank you.
Seriously. Okay, so you know, we talk about the web. We talk about, you know, there we go, what makes us unique. And I'm curious, what is it about Psych Central, do you think, that really does set it apart?
Well, certainly I'm biased about this, but I'm also the right guy to ask about it, because I've done a lot of thinking about, you know, why is Psych Central unique? Why aren't we like everybody else? One thing I think is because we're independent. I don't answer to anyone. I don't have a boss. I don't have venture capitalists to answer to. I don't have a fiduciary board or stockholders. And because of that, we have as much editorial independence as we want. There's no one we answer to, and there's nothing we've ever done that I'm ashamed of and wouldn't want printed in the New York Times or something. I think very few internet companies have that kind of independence that we have, and it's something I'm very happy and proud of, and not probably going to give up anytime soon.
So how is that an advantage? How are you seeing that?
Well, because in this day of this day and age of changing priorities, if you have a stockholders that you answer to, then you're always chasing the stock price, and you're doing things for your company and for the website that are primarily focused on moving the needle on the stock price. And the same is true with a fiduciary board, a board of directors, where, again, you're answering to try and gain the most monetary value from the website or from your company. We're not focused on the monetary value of our company. That's a sideline. The fact that we have to make money is a secondary concern to what we do, and that is to be first and foremost independent publisher of mental health information. So right. we're not driven by financial interests or the latest drug that comes out that has a big marketing budget or something like that. You know, fine. Well, if that money comes along, we'll you know, we might be in line for some of it, but we're not going to build our company or our website around other people's interests.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Sure. I'll give you a quick example. For instance, we've had no problem pointing out the poor, sloppy research of this very prestigious journal called Pediatrics, because very few other organizations are willing to take on this powerful professional association that backs that journal, and for us, we don't care. We don't have a relationship with that association, and bad research is just bad research. I don't care where it appears. So that's one of the things that we can do that maybe some other website that has more of an interest in making sure they kind of toe the company line doesn't. I think another thing that makes us unique is that we're headed up by actual mental health professionals, not business people. So that kind of plays into what I was saying. Like, every decision about the site is based upon what people tell us they want from a site like ours.
Right.
We've never said, hey, since slideshows bring in more page views, we should do more slideshows.
Right.
I hate slideshows. You'll never see a slideshow on Psych Central because they have no value to the end user. They have a lot of value to the publishers and advertisers who push the slideshows onto users. So third thing is that we understand and appreciate the value of online support groups and the power of self-help, as I've talked about here. I've worked for a lot of different startups and .coms in my time, and I've seen a lot of them treat support groups as an afterthought, and they shut them down as soon as they become a drain on the company's expenses, or if they just become too burdensome to run because of spam or community issues or something. So.
Right. I just want to mention, John, just a little housekeeping. Your voice audio is sort of going in and out a little bit. Just flagging that for you.
I'll try and speak up louder.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
I wanted to interject as well. We've got a comment, if you don't mind. This might be a good point to mention. It's not really a question, but
sure.
One of our bloggers, when we're talking about what makes us unique, is saying that Psych Central is as good as it is because it provides quality resources with good ground rules and parameters for members. That is, no put-downs or berating, etc., of other members. It's not condoned. And this person has been a member for 10 years with Psych Central.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic to hear.
We're getting...
And that's absolutely a part of what we're proud of, and the fact that we represent as many diverse voices as we possibly can in the mental health world. We're not just a site that is populated by mental health professionals, from speaking from on high. We are a site that welcomes all comers. Many of our most popular blogs are not written by professionals, but they're written by wonderful authors who are sharing their own personal experiences with the condition or concern. And I mean, they can be such uplifting resources for people who are sharing that concern and really need to know that there are other people that are fighting the same battle that they are.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's so great to be to feel validated and know that you're not alone. I mean, that's a huge part of it to recovery, for sure.
Absolutely. And that's just something that's built into our DNA from the ground up that, one of my pet peeves in graduate school was to see that all the professions in mental health were kind of in their own silos. Psychologists were in their silo, psychiatrists were in theirs, social workers were in theirs, and they never talked to each other. You would get on internship or a practicum, and these different professionals would rarely communicate directly or sort of hang out together. And the only time you might get some interaction was during case conferences or sort of a more formal setting where everybody was going to be talking about the same person around a round table for training exercises and stuff. But it was the exception and not the rule, and I just never understood that. I'm like, we're here to help people. We need to be talking to each other, and we need to stop thinking like one profession is better than the other profession. So.
Mm-hmm. And absolutely. I mean, to me, that makes perfect sense. Really, much like the medical model. I mean, communication and treating it as, cross-pollination and sharing information. I mean, how can that not enhance everybody's main goal, which is to help, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And today we're calling it holistic care.
Right.
Or we're talking about the medical home, where all the professions are sort of brought together in one holistic practice. You're starting to see more family physicians, embrace the fact that mental health is a core component of one's overall health, and they're doing integrative practices and things of that nature. So we're definitely starting to see movement on that needle, but it seems to me to be slower than it should or needs to be. So.
Sure, and maybe that's a good segue into keeping us on track here about Psych Central. Is now an opportune time to ask, what does the future hold for us for Psych Central? What are we looking forward to?
Well, the future is fantastic. I mean, here we are celebrating 20 freaking years of being online.
Woo!
That's older than Google. That's older than WebMD. That's older than Yahoo. I am so happy that we have spent 20 years together building this. And, 20 years ago, it was just me, and I appreciate that. But I'm 1,000 times happier that it involves so many great people today that really go to make up the website that it is today. We have a staff of like a dozen different editors that work on the site every day. We have, I think, over 70 active blogs today. We have another 70 that have become inactive, but they spend time, and so we have 140 total blogs.
But the 70 that are inactive are archived, I just want to point out.
Well, yeah, they're there,
yeah,
and
exactly.
That information, I mean, some of those bloggers blog for years, and, blogging, as you know, it's a commitment, and it's a hard commitment to maintain years and years and years later. So I appreciate and value every one of our bloggers who have just done such a fantastic job over the years and put so much of their own creativity and perspective and insights and giving all that to our community has just been invaluable to so many people. If you saw our feedback inboxes and how they overflow with good feedback, but also compliments and praise and things like that to let us know that that people are really getting some value from the website. So
I'm sure you've got more great stuff to tell us about the future, John. I just want to flag for you, we do have a number of questions that have come in, but what other great stuff are we looking forward to?
Yeah, let me just really briefly say, if you told me in 2006, back when I went full-time working on Psych Central, that we'd ever be serving more than 1 million people on the website, I'd be like, yeah, I don't think so. I mean, But we hit that milestone just 2.5 years later in the end of 2008. And we've been now doing like 30% year-over-year growth.
30%?
Yeah, we're growing 30% every year. It's been great. So we're going to continue building and getting some new fantastic bloggers to join us in the upcoming year. We are actively always building and working on our blog network because they are such a core component and really value of what we of what the website provides today. This year too, we actually started last year, but we're also building out more of our resources for the mental health professionals themselves, who actually do a lot of the referrals to our website. We actually kind of realized that we weren't giving them as much content and information as we could have been giving them all these years. And so we're actually trying to catch up to that and make sure that mental health professionals themselves actually can use our website just like consumers do and turn to it and use it for getting new information about new treatments and new types of therapies and things like that. Mm-hmm. We're probably going to be doing some more social networking. That's certainly been a focus over the past couple of years. We've thrown more resources at that because we love interacting with people on social media, and it's been a fantastic way to sort of interact more directly with a wider group of people who might not become members of our website but are still interested in the kinds of things that we are talking about. And so social media like Twitter and Facebook and getting more into Instagram in the upcoming year. And I think those are some of the major components of what we're doing. We're always kind of tweaking the site design. We might go more responsive this year, making it like a little bit of a nicer read on your smartphone and mobile phones, because obviously, as I talked about earlier, more and more people are accessing us that way. So I wanted to just wrap it up there because we do have some questions. I definitely want to leave time for that. Let's do it.
Just one final thing. I think you mentioned earlier when we were chatting that there's something coming up in the summer. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You want to mention that or quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. So in summertime, we're going to have some meetups around the country.
Right, meetups.
For people who want to meet each other face-to-face who have been impacted by our work in one of our support groups.
And where can we find out more about that?
Want to meet one of our bloggers or writers or editors or even myself. If you're in the greater Boston area, I'll be going to that one. That's in our forum, so if you just go to forums.psychcentral.com, there's a link right on the top of that page that will take you into the meetups. And you can put your 2 cents in there. Where if you find a meetup in your area that you'd like to hang out and join, those will be done in June. So
great. Okay, thanks. Okay, now to the questions. Oh boy.
Yes.
All right. Here's one. This should be a quick one. Do you know roughly how many members are in the UK?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't offhand, but
okay.
I can certainly look that up and get back to
the person who asked. Sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. We have sort of a...
We just to say in a very general way, we actually, obviously most of our traffic comes from the U.S., but the other 3 big countries where we do get most of our traffic are Canada, the UK, and Australia because they're English-speaking.
English, yes. So, yes. Okay. Here's another one. I am interested in finding a treatment center for a 20-year-old nephew who is in need of inpatient or residential treatment for psychosis. His home is in Connecticut. I'm proud of myself. I'm Canadian. I got that. Connecticut. Yet his parents would consider anywhere in New England that has an excellent reputation. Currently, I'm not going to say a name there, he's somewhere, but he's scheduled to discharge due to insurance reasons. How does one research options for this need, I think is the salient detail.
Yeah, and what kind of treatments were they looking for?
They say they're in an inpatient for a residential treatment for psychosis.
for psychosis.
That's all we
You know, there are a lot of great inpatient treatment options available to people in the greater New England area. Just, you know, it's hard to say without knowing more about their financial situation, because unlike Canada, things like that are paid for by insurance companies. So, you know, off the top of my head, I would probably say McLean Hospital outside Boston is a good one to check out if they haven't already. And yeah, otherwise, I would have to get back to them about more options.
Okay. But how do they research the options is the question, I think.
So there's, you know, in America, the pendulum has swung the other way, where we ended up closing probably too many of our inpatient treatment hospitals for serious mental illness and short-term treatment. So the options are more limited than they were 20 years ago. It's hard to say how do you research the options in any kind of systematic way, because, like I said, a lot of it kind of depends on how you're paying for it. And if you're paying for it through your employer-based health insurance, they're going to have a list of providers that they will pay for, and so you're going to have to look for a facility that has some of those providers in it. So it's really kind of checking that insurance database for providers who specialize or have a experience with treating psychosis, and then, you know, kind of cross-referencing that for an inpatient facility. So it does take some effort, yeah.
Right, okay. I don't know if this will help at all, but they just send in a little more information that he's also been diagnosed with chronic Lyme. His parents are having difficulty having a psychiatric treatment team embrace the medical diagnosis and treat simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Lyme disease up here is a big deal. It's not as well understood or seen that often in other parts of the country. But in the New England area, Lyme disease is a real concern, and there are no easy answers to it, because there are some medical providers who don't even believe that it exists as a real disease. So it's really finding the specialists, and how do you find those specialists is a lot of legwork. But one of the things that helps cut that legwork down, and can help anyone in a situation like this, is actually finding a support group online that is for that concern, and asking that support group, hey, how did you manage this issue when you first were diagnosed? You will find some great answers from people responding to that kind of query in most of the support groups I've seen. So whether it's on Psych Central or not, it doesn't matter. So.
And also maybe some great referrals.
Yeah, that's right? The key.
I mean,
that you will get the names of some people to talk to, definitely.
Great. Okay, more questions. As a forum member, I would like to know if that 29% of traffic to your blogs is including the forums, or do you know how much traffic is for forum use only? Pardon me.
Yeah, that's actually just our blogging network, which is either blogs.psychcentral.com or our main blog, The World of Psychology, on the main website. So that does not include the forums. Unfortunately, I did not print out our analytics for the past month, so I can't tell you off the top of my head how much traffic goes to the forums. I think last time, if I remember correctly, it was probably about 10% of our traffic is our community. So.
And but we've got to remember that's 10% of quite a lot of people. You know.
Yeah, that is it's a big number.
Okay. Next question. Someone is wanting to thank you for making the forums. I've been a member for 4 years or so, and it's literally changed my life for getting support for schizophrenia. I've made a lot of friends, and it's my main resource for support. So congratulations. Wow. Yeah. Here's a question. I think, any plans to attempt another, quote, real-life yeah, I have this question too. Real-life conference so we can discuss mental health issues and potentially meet one another, or perhaps having Dr. Grohol visiting different areas on a sort of world tour. Well, I think you talked about the meetups, but yeah, conference. Any plans?
Yeah, so we tried the conference thing, I guess it was a year or two ago, a year and a half ago, and we just didn't have enough sign-ups, and that probably speaks to the fact that we didn't quite organize the conference in a more in a focused enough way to get the numbers that we would need to make a conference successful. We're not off the idea altogether, but we are definitely having to rethink it and rethink how we would do that in a way that would make sense, in economic sense, not just for us, but for people who really want to attend it, and geographically that can often be a challenge. So the meetups this summer might be one small way of trying to, facilitate that face-to-face opportunity for people. And although I'm not going to do a world tour, like I said earlier, I will be at the Boston meetup, so there is that.
Great excuse for a road trip in my book.
Hey, there you go.
Okay, here's another one. Could Psych Central create an online store to buy merchandise and resources? Ooh, I would like that too.
Yeah, we actually have an online store, but we don't really promote it much because we haven't updated the items in the store anytime soon. It's got some good stuff in it. It's I'm pretty sure the URL is cafepress.com /Psych Central. So we've priced everything in that store to be basically as cheap as we can sell it, but as cheap as Cafe Press will allow us to sell it. So we're not really there. We don't have anything there really to make money off of. But we do have some like logoed things in that store, and we're actually, because it's our 20th anniversary year, we're actually working on a new store with new products someplace else, and we'll hopefully have that live and ready to go within, I'd say, by May. So.
Okay, great. We've got more questions in 3 minutes and a wrap up too.
Yeah.
So quickly, oh, great. Which areas of self-help is the internet lacking in? What can we help people do better through online information and access?
Well, that's a really good question and a really tough question. It's I don't know that I have an easy answer for it in the time that we have, but I think that one of the beauties and joys of the internet is that it's really allowed people who had very rare concerns or very embarrassing concerns to find each other and come together and be able to support one another with those concerns. And so I don't know that I can name any, one or set specifically that would answer that question, but I think it's done a great job because of its anonymity and making people feel comfortable to talk about these kinds of things online.
Okay, and by the way, I had to ask permission. That was Mike Bundron who asked that question, our good friend and blogger with lots of great YouTube videos on our Psych Central YouTube channel. Yep. Well, I think that's it for our questions and our time, so that worked out rather well. We do have one suggestion about perhaps joining up with another annual therapist conference rather than going on our own, so I'll just throw that out to you. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, the thing is that would be great for our professional friends and colleagues. I'm not sure that makes as much sense for trying to reach consumers and lay people and whatnot. So.
Okay. All right, and sorry I got distracted there for a minute while I take back the screen and show our last slide, and oh my goodness, our time is pretty much over. I would like to say on behalf of everyone, I think I can do this. Congratulations, John. PsychCentral.com has been so much help to me personally, and as we've heard, to so many others. You can still hear me?
Absolutely.
Oh,
it's
good.
It's been a pleasure, being here tonight and talking about, the inspiration and the story behind Psych Central, and I appreciate your time and all the attendees' times for coming out and joining us tonight.
Yes, and thank you for sharing that that wonderful story at the beginning. It's been an amazing night, and I would like to remind everyone that the replay of tonight's webinar will be posted at Psych Central's YouTube channel a little later this week. I want to thank everyone who attended live tonight, and of course I'd like to thank those of you who are listening to the replay. And of course, once again, a very special thanks to our founder, Psych Central's founder, Dr. John Grohol, and I want to say I'm fearless leader. So we are just so looking forward to another fabulous, another great year of helping and supporting others. So thank you, John, and on behalf of PsychCentral.com and me, Zoë Kessler, thanks so much for joining us, and good night.